very warm welcome to the show. Now, the Parliament of the Economic Community of West African States is urging Nigeria to ensure that its general election is credible and rancor-free to further ensure peace across the sub-region. The Speaker of the Community Parliament, Dr. Sidi Tunis, made a call at the opening of the 2022 first ordinary session of the Regional Parliament, which has now come to an end. On security, members of the Regional Parliament with actionable solutions to ending the insecurity, bad governance, and other challenges confronting the region were all discussed. Now, Tunis also condemned the recent act of terrorism and banditry, not just in Nigeria, but across other countries within the sub-region, which is said has caused a significant setback in the affected countries. The menace of food shortage was also looked at, and a call was placed to the community to proffer lasting solutions to the crisis. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined in the studio by Fatoumata and Njie, who is a member of the Gambian Delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament and also a member of the Committee on Political Affairs, Peace, Security and Africa Peer Review Mechanism. And also joining us here is Honorable Lynda Chuba Ikpeazu, who is a member representing Onitsha North and South Federal Constituency, a member of the Nigerian delegation, and she's also the chairman, Committee on Telecommunications, ECOWAS Parliament. So good to have all of you here. Let me start with you, Fatoumata and Njie. The ECOWAS Parliament has now come to an end of its first session, and some issues of security were discussed, and I just want you to shed more light on the efforts made by parliamentarians like you to ensure that these issues of security are tackled not just by the ECOWAS Commission, but the countries involved within the sub-region.
Thank you very much for having us today, talking about this very important issue regarding peace and security in the region. We've seen how threatened the ECOWAS region is, because 5 years ago we all thought that our region was the most stable, free of coup d'etats and insecurity insurgencies, but we've seen that it is creeping back, and in a very fast pace, which is a cause for concern, especially to us parliamentarians, more so to us female parliamentarians, because when we talk about insecurity, we talk about the security of our children, we talk about the risk of movement, and when people move, obviously mothers are more at risk because they are more exposed to dangers, they are more exposed not only to that but also to hunger. What we have done as parliamentarians is to try to control the damage and look at mechanisms that would reduce the insecurities in this region. As a Gambian parliamentarian, which is close to Senegal, and we've all known the insecurities in the Senegal-Casamance region, which has recently surged, I think we need to look into it as a community and make sure that it is curbed quickest as possible.
Okay, the issue of insecurity moves around the entire sub-region. We have the Sahel, Mano River, and Senegambia regions within ECOWAS. Tell us, Honorable Chinda, Lynda, how the emphasis on Nigeria is very, very important, especially as we go to the polls, and that's why you had the Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament emphasizing on it, that beginning from the elections in Nigeria next year, there are 2 other countries within the sub-region that will be holding elections, and if the elections are not well conducted, it could actually lead to more security issues on the continent, not just within the sub-region.
Well, yeah, like you rightly said, we really do have a lot a situation when it comes to security. In Nigeria, we're all Nigerians and we live here. We know the situation we have right now. Just even before the election, let's just talk about terrorism in Nigeria, and of course, the sub-region. What we have now is different multiplicity of different groups of terrorists. That's what we have right now in Nigeria, and it spans the whole of the country. But what Nigeria is doing right now in terms of regional cooperation is there's this multinational joint task force that certain countries are part of. You have Cameroon, you have Chad, of course you have Nigeria, that's what you know. So they are working together, and we've had some successes, at least in the Chad area. But we still have a lot of work to do. You know, and like I said, going into the election, because if you look at Burkina Faso, if you look at Guinea, what actually precipitated the coup d'etats in those countries was really the election. They had election, they had situation where there was issue as to the legislative outcome, the election, the election, and of course they had the presidential, I believe, in Guinea, and they had the same in Burkina Faso for the legislative arm. So that, of course, though of course that's not the only reason, but that of course, in addition to poverty, bad governance, all of that.
Yeah, and
created
the issues of tampering with the constitutions.
Exactly, created the situation. That's why in the parliament right now, what we're trying to make sure is to have the protocols, okay, that empower us to make legislations that within all the member states, you're not going to tamper with the Electoral Act. Okay, at least 6 months, I mean major tampering, major amendment, at least 6 months before an election. You're going to also have to make sure that the agencies charged with conducting those elections are truly independent, not just seem to be independent, they truly must be independent. Because when you have those situations, it will help. But when you have a situation that when people don't even feel that the umpires are not biased, okay, it makes it easy for people to question the results. And of course, with this and other factors, it can lead to a lot of things.
Yeah, and a lot of persons within the sub-region are counting on the ECOWAS Parliament to help provide solutions. Let's look at some of the solutions that your own session of this Parliament has been able to provide. I was told that there was this 2020 to 2024 action plan that the ECOWAS Parliament has been working on. Just shed some light on that, Fatoumata.
I always have my reservations when we come up with plans, because now we are talking about the 2020-2024 action plan. Meanwhile, we've had the 2013 plan and nothing was implemented, or no effective implementation came out of it. So when we talk about 2020 to 2024 plan, I would still be skeptical about it, because we are used to coming up with very good, excellent plans which we send. But looking at the way ECOWAS is, its decisions are always taken by the 15 heads of states. I always call it a gentleman's club, which I think is wrong, because
we have a woman there.
Because I mean, just one woman obviously is not wouldn't be effective enough. But we have a parliament. As parliamentarians, we are lawmakers, and what the laws or the recommendations that we make must be respected. But if we look at ECOWAS Parliament, we only give our opinion in things, and it is up to the 15 heads of states. But going back to the 2020-2024 action plan, I will still say I am a bit hopeful, because the amount of money spent on that $2.3 billion is a lot of money, and not to come out with good mechanisms to implement the strategies would be a total failure to ECOWAS. And I would also say that it is a step in the right direction, because it enables ECOWAS to provide leadership. It enables us to come up with issues that have been of concern, and like my colleague Lynda said, leadership issues. How reliable, how much confidence do we have in our leaders? If we, for example, we look at Guinea, months before the elections, we saw how Condé manipulated the constitution with the ECOWAS heads of states not even say anything.
Yeah, I mean,
and then now
silence of conspiracy.
Silence of conspiracy. So. And then after that, they had to send military people. I think we should respect the early warnings by the ECOWAS commissioners, because by the ECOWAS Commission, because we have experts who are not politicians, and their interest is the interest of the community, not us whose interest is to be in power, because we are politicians. First and foremost, we look at what keeps us in power for long, rather than looking at what benefits the whole community in a longer longer term. But then I would say that this 2020 plan has aims to address the main issues, and that is the root causes, I beg your pardon, not the root causes of terrorism, but it looks at border issues. Border issues are not the root causes of terrorism. What are the root causes of terrorism? It's corruption, it's hunger, it's poverty, but it doesn't directly address those issues. So we will go back to 2024 and we will have to go back and look at the main issues. So what I'm urging our leaders is, yes, it is a good initiative, but it still lacks the substance that would grab on the main issues that would prevent further terrorism in our region.
And one would say that the ECOWAS Parliament has helped to engender some reforms, Lynda, that we've seen the ECOWAS Commission itself being reduced in terms of the number of persons running it and all of that. Some of those reforms are beginning to take place. But how do we ensure that those reforms also help to provide food? Because we've seen, including your speaker, raising the issue of food security, that there's a lot of food insecurity, more people are getting into poverty, there's a high cost of living within the sub-region, and especially women and children are affected. In the course of your discussions within this session, what are some of the solutions you offer to help reduce, the issues of hunger within the sub-region?
First of all, we determined that the major cause is bad governance. You must at all times, if you're serving the people, provide for them. Definitely, obviously you're not going to take care of 100% of people's problems, but you must have certain things in place.
Yeah, but the leaders were complaining, complaining of COVID, that there was COVID between 2020, and that has reduced the quantum of finances available for dealing with issues of health, food, and all of that.
So definitely, we all know that COVID, the pandemic, we all know what it did. It affected everyone globally, so it's not peculiar to the sub-region. So definitely, because of the COVID, resources that should have been diverted to certain places were now taken to the health sector to save lives. So definitely, that you're not going to get away from that and say that that wasn't an issue. So that's an issue. But then going forward, what do? We must put certain plans in place, actual plans, to make sure that we provide food. Okay, different countries have different plans. Some people give loans to farmers and all of that. So it depends on the member state. But the important thing is we determined that each member state should really go down to their countries and determine what works for them. But that the ultimate goal should be to have food security, which right now we don't have. So that's...
Okay, and I want to pose the same question to you. The issue of food security is very, very paramount since the COVID outbreak, which has led to more people becoming poorer within the sub-region especially.
I think going back to the COVID, it only emphasizes our weaknesses. It only emphasizes the need for us to have more structured institutions. Because COVID, like my honorable colleague Lynda mentioned, is a worldwide, it affected the whole world. But the way it affected Africa is different from the way it affected other countries, because for example, in the Western world, they have a welfare system where you can stay at home and still be fed by the system. But in Africa, you must go out for your daily meal. Otherwise, you will starve, and that is exposed the weaknesses of our society, even though as a region we are most endowed with natural resources, but they are less utilized.
Some people also counter and tell you that the African system helps to build this family shocks, that if you don't have food in your house, you can actually go to someone else's house. But of course, we saw that during that COVID period, some houses were lacking food. So you may just end up going to another person's house and you find that they are also hungry.
They are also hungry because the way things are done here, we don't have a system that would push us to go and fend for ourselves. We have a system that would push the system itself to push people in more poverty, again, like Honorable Lynda said, because of corruption. We've seen people during COVID, some people did not suffer. because they could afford to buy in bulk. But some people suffered. That's why personally I was against the state of emergency without the government actually coming out with some sort of welfare system. Otherwise the burden would fall on us as politicians, especially female politicians, because we've seen how countries that were led by female leaders, how they manage to control the spread and to control the level of poverty. Again, that's why I'm a female politician, but then again I call myself a female activist. That's why I call on females to go on and take up leadership positions, because it eases the burden of poverty on people directly. There's a direct impact between female leaders and the reduction of level of poverty, because when we look at budgets, for example, we look at more social, economic the effects rather than defense or security issues. Even if you look at the 2020-2024 ECOWAS Strategic Action Plan, there's nothing that empowers the community citizens. It rather focuses on border management and security again, information and intelligence sharing. We already have that. Our intelligence sharing is quite strong actually, because the way we communicate within ourselves, we don't need any form of like government to manage that. We've seen how Lynda and I interact. We've seen how politicians, how the community interacts. We've seen during COVID how people were sending monies to families. That I call intelligence sharing. But then, I mean, training and equipment for defense again, and security forces. We don't need security forces. We need manufacturing. We need means of training our youths. We need means of empowering our women to be more independent rather than focusing on security issues. I think that is what we need, and I think COVID, if it's not a lesson learned, would be a failure to the community.
Okay, the issues of peace within the sub-region is very, very important. I'm very, very interested in knowing how we can actually prevent the return of coups back to the region. The international community is so sad that West Africa is beginning to look like a poster child for the return of military leaders here and there. But there was something that happened recently last week, where we could see the leaders in Burkina Faso, both the former the deposed president meeting with the former president and then the incumbent military ruler, all trying to see how peace can be returned. And of course we can see that in other countries like your country, Gambia, I mean, we've seen that democracy is beginning to pull through. How do we ensure that we have the shock absorbers that would prevent military interventions?
Well, there are really a lot of factors that we're going to have to work on. First of all, we need to strengthen democracy. ECOWAS needs to do that. And of course, the member states need to do that. And there are so many ways to do it. First of all, we need to make sure, at least, because whatever legislation you make it take into consideration your environment. So we know that in our environment, people love to just sit there in power, especially when the constitution of the country specifically stipulates how many terms you're going to be there. So we have that problem in Africa. Okay, so we need to make sure that our constitutions actually do specify the 2-term limit, okay, for presidents, okay, so the executive. Going beyond that, you have to also make sure that ECOWAS will need to penalize people that engage in coups. It needs to be criminalized.
Yeah, I mean, we could see the example in Mali. Mali was criminalized by ECOWAS, but despite that, it just was looking like a child who wasn't even interested in ECOWAS sanctions.
Yeah, but that's the point. That's the point. We need to go the extra mile, okay? In situations where it has occurred, which is Burkina Faso, what we now need to do is to make sure that the sanctions are stiff enough, okay? We all have our breaking points. each country has its breaking point. So if a coup already has taken place, you look at the breaking point of that particular country and apply whatever that's going to make it happen to make sure that they return rule to the civilians. Okay, and of course in this, in Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, they have what is called transition government or transition committee. So the ECOWAS needs to get a commitment from them as to the time limit that they're going to return power. That's for the places where the coup has occurred. But in order to prevent coups, there are so many things. Like my sister, Fatoumata, mentioned earlier, we need to start using the early warning mechanism. ECOWAS has early warning mechanism. If you look at all these countries that coups occurred, there were early warning mechanisms, yes, that we just didn't trigger.
And the one thing I'm interested in is to find out why it's the Francophone countries that are more susceptible to coups within the sub-region. I don't know if you may chip that in.
No, I don't, well, personally, I don't feel it has anything to do with whether it's French
Mali, Burkina Faso,
because there was a time you had Nigeria. Yes. There was a time it was Nigeria.
Ghana.
There was a time Ghana, Gambia.
Gambia.
So, so I think it's a regional thing. I think as opposed to whatever language, whether it's Francophone or Anglophone. I personally don't believe it's that.
Guinea-Bissau is Lusophone, but they just had, they had series of coups previously, and then they just had a missed coup recently. But then what I would say is that the early warnings are obviously ignored, and the reason again goes back to the leadership, because everybody wants to cling on to power. And even if we have like term limits, for example, Senegal, they have 2 term limits, but it depends how you see it, because legality, this is where legality and morality comes into being. If it says 2 term limit, and then obviously laws cannot be set back. But then again, it's you, it's your integrity, it's how principled you are. I've already served a term, and then we included a 2 term limit in our laws. For me, I would count my previous term, because I would want to be perceived as a principled and dependable leader. But then again, what we are seeing in Senegal, I'm not saying it's illegal for Macky to go for I would call it a 3rd term. People would call it a 2nd term. Legally, it would be a 2nd term.
Well, it's obvious.
But
in the realities that the ECOWAS would ignore it. Has been seen to be ignoring some of these things, and that's where the problem starts from.
Like Lynda mentioned, we've seen what happened in Guinea. The constitution was amended. We all knew it was unconstitutional.
But can't the ECOWAS Parliament, for example, bring some sanctions?
ECOWAS Parliament can only give their opinion. Like I said, we need to be stronger as a parliament, rather than just like a watchdog, a dog that can bark but cannot bite. That is what we are, unfortunately. It is sad to say, but that is what we are. We have seen what happened. We recently rejected a constitution amendment. Why? Because we wanted to insert a 2-term limit, and my president blatantly rejected it because he did not want his 4th term to be counted. And obviously it wouldn't have been counted, but the thing is, some of us are just not, I'm not gonna be rude or anything, but laws are laws.
Okay, so try to round off this conversation.
But the thing is, right, when Fatoumata spoke about our powers, we need to have more enhancement of powers. Okay, because our powers are limited.
And who will give you the powers? Aren't you supposed to give yourself those powers?
The funny thing is it's the heads of states. You see, that's the problem. Okay, it's the heads of states, and it's these heads of states that determine what happens. And like you said, it's like a club. Okay, it's these heads of states that determine what happens.
Yeah, because I keep wondering why it's not so powerful like the EU Parliament.
No, it's not.
The powers that the EU Parliament has over.
We don't even have to go to the EU. We can look at our African neighbors, the ELA. They have more powers, and when laws are enacted, if for example, what recently happened, the heads of states agreed, discussed 2-term limits. It was rejected by, I think, 3 countries. And then what do? As a parliament, we could have debated that and pushed them to agree on those terms, because that's what we need. That is what the region needs for stability. But then who dictates stability on us? 15 people against 115 members in the parliament? Come on, we should look at our...
As we try to round up this conversation, the focus of ECOWAS has always been on the economic community, building an economic community. But we've seen situations whereby states within this economic community are shutting down their borders, like Nigeria did, Ghana and all of that. How do we prevent that? Because it has also restricted movement of persons, and it defeats the main purpose of having an ECOWAS. Okay, let's start with you then.
It also comes back to state sovereignty. Like we've just mentioned, we see the sovereignty of our states as supreme. And if we look at the state sovereignty as supreme, then we have lesser powers. Because, for example, Gambia, we are only 2 million people. If we had seen the community as the bigger picture, I would have called myself a member of a community with over 300 million people, and that would have given me greater opportunities, like what we've seen in Nigeria before. They closed their borders with Benin,
yeah,
and we've also seen Guinea close their borders with Liberia. We sometimes see Gambia not formally close our borders, but there are restrictions, because I cannot cross after midnight from Gambia to Senegal. That is border closure, which I think is quite funny. So I mean, it's not a matter, it's not a something that we should laugh about. It's something that we should really frown up and revisit. Make sure that our people move freely. I mean, I'm a Gambian. We still call ECOWAS citizens aliens. We issue them alien cards.
I mean, it's been so controversial in Nigeria here because of the security issues, and we keep saying people come into our country and contribute to the insecurity. And yet we have we are supposed to have a borderless situation as part of ECOWAS.
Well, that's the ideal. Okay, that was one of the principles of ECOWAS, but unfortunately we have not achieved that. Probably because as nations, as member states, most of us don't actually have very strong economy, because it boils down to economy. Okay, I'll take for example Nigeria. Nigeria closed at the point, Nigeria closed its border with Benin, Njie, but fortunately, they've opened the border to Benin, and of course the Katsina area that borders with Niger has also been opened. But the point is, it boils down to economy and it boils down to security. You can't have a situation where everybody can just walk in, okay, and you have a serious security problem in your country. You must deal with that first, because I mean, you have a responsibility as a government, okay, to protect the lives of the people, of your citizens. And of course, if they're ECOWAS citizens, they're still your citizens. So if you cannot do that, then you must work on your country first in order to be able to key in to one of the goals of ECOWAS, which is free movement of persons and goods.
All right, I'm afraid that's the only time we have so much.
I totally agree, because if you cannot secure your own citizens, how can you extend it to the ECOWAS community? And it's the same thing that we are seeing Senegal and Gambia within the region of Casamance, because we have rebels in Casamance and the border is so close. People will run across to the Gambia and they will start shooting at us. So we must close our borders to protect our people.
Well, there's so much work to be done by parliamentarians like you to unite the people within the sub-region. We must thank you so much. Honorable Lynda Chuba Ikpeazu is a member of the Nigerian delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament, and she also represents Onitsha North and South Federal Constituency in the Federal House of Representatives in Nigeria here. And of course, we have also been joined in the studio by Fatoumata and Njie, an honorable member too, representing the Gambian delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament. Just that I don't know your local constituency in Gambia.
Banjul South. I represent the capital city of Banjul.
Okay, interesting indeed. We must thank you so much, Honorable Lynda and Honorable Fatoumata. We wish you well and hope to have you again when the ECOWAS Parliament comes in session again, the second session before the year ends. Thank you so much.